Hello and welcome to Invictus Sport, the only show on your TV dedicated to Kent's sporting action. We're switching things up and trying a new format to the show that you know and love. Today we're bringing you an interview with Dan French, a tennis coach from Medway who went from playing against his dad in a makeshift court in their garage to building his very own training academy from scratch. We hope you enjoy. Dan, thank you very much for coming along to the studio. Really good to have you here again. I want to start by talking about your path into tennis. What was the first time tell me about the first time you picked up a racket?
I think the first time I remember really doing it was me and my dad used to put a net across our garages and we used to play a little bit together there. And then after that, I kind of sort of encouraged some friends to play and we went down the Strand and played during sort of that time when Wimbledon's on. And then it sort of ended up me just sort of being the only one that kind of carried on. Some of my friends stuck out for a bit of a while, but then I just continued and then just didn't really look back after that.
Yeah, I mean, was your dad always into tennis?
No, not really. We were just like challenging each other. He likes cricket. I could never beat him at snooker. So we were quite sporty, quite competitive against each other, and he never let me win. But then I found that I could actually beat him at something, so maybe that's why I carried on.
And I know that you tried a few other sports as well growing up. You did some karate, a bit of football. Why was it that tennis stuck with you?
I don't know. I think like watching tennis on TV is a really fun sport to watch, and I got a bit obsessed with it, like during school, and watching all the different Grand Slams and getting behind some different players. And yeah, I think then when I went to go watch tennis live, I think it was just a totally different experience from anything else that I've seen live. So I think that's what really helped me kind of keep going. What
was the first time you saw tennis live?
I think that was Wimbledon, centre court. My first coach, I was very fortunate. He actually gave me a ticket, and we went together. We saw some good matches. Saw Federer play, saw Murray play. And then I think we saw Williams actually play Sharapova in a fourth round match. So that was a good day.
How old were you at this stage?
2011, about 14, something like that. Yeah, 14, 13, something like that. Yeah.
And I mean, seeing someone like Andy Murray, centre court, Wimbledon, that's kind of, for a British young tennis player like yourself, that must have been huge.
Oh, absolutely as well. And I think, it was before he actually won Wimbledon as well, so there was that extra encouragement from the crowd to really try and get behind it. So it was a really good atmosphere to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. Talk to me. I mean, did you have any big sporting heroes growing up? I mean, Andy Murray's one of the big ones, obviously. Was there any others?
I think tennis-wise, I was a little bit left field. So a lot of people would argue that when Federer played Nadal at Wimbledon 2008, that was probably one of the best matches going. And I will always disagree with them because I liked watching this very specific match between Nadal and Verdasco. And Verdasco actually just retired about 2 weeks ago. So my favourite player actually has left the game now. So, but he was my favourite player, and been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times. But he's a very good player, big lefty forehand. Anybody who hasn't heard of him before, yeah, definitely check him out. He's a good player.
And as someone who's so involved in tennis, what's it like for you watching a tennis match that is just so intense? What are you kind of looking out for?
I think a lot of people will look at the score to start with. I think sometimes a good match, a classic match usually is qualified by 5 sets, isn't it? But yeah, I just think if it goes one way or the other way, or there's a little bit of drama, I think Nadal Federer is a good example. There was the rain delays and that added to the tension, and I think there's good stories behind some of those matches as well, particularly Nadal trying to beat Federer at Wimbledon for the first time. But yeah, that Nadal-Verdasco match, it was somebody who was not really expected to be in a semi-final of a Grand Slam, giving it 110%, and Nadal just saying, you're going to have to go through me, and he couldn't get the job done in the end, but he gave it a hell of a try, and it was a really respectable performance, definitely.
Okay, so going from a teen watching these stars at Wimbledon and the like to eventually becoming a coach of yourself, what was that kind of interim period like? Did you ever see yourself going professional?
No, I think because I came to the game quite late, so I didn't really start playing tennis till I was about 11 or so. I mean, you still dare to dream, and you know, you want to do that sort of thing. But I think there's a bit of realism there in terms of you've got to have a certain amount of talent and a certain amount of work behind you as well. And I'm not saying that anybody who comes to the game late doesn't have the potential to go professional, but I think I just didn't have enough behind me and enough talent behind me, because there's got to be something there to kind of help you catch up as well. I think there are so many players out there that work so hard, particularly what we see in and around Kent, that are doing a really great job of you know, working, training as much as they do. And I think it would be quite naive to suggest that, you know, if you don't put the work in, you're not gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah. When we see how much pressure is put on some of the youngsters now over on the global stage as well, we think about Emma Raducanu, you know, Jack Draper, these sort of big names of British tennis, but they're only in their early 20s. But we'll come on to them. I want to talk a bit more about yourself first. Tell me how Dan James Tennis came about.
I mean, it was a bit of a chance, I guess, in the sense of I just decided to really just take a chance on starting a business, really, and I saw the courts and a venue that was sort of available, and asked the school if it was okay to do some after school club. And during that period, I was preparing myself to open, and then I opened a little bit earlier than I was expecting because of some circumstances. But from that point on, it was just all systems go. Started an adult program from, I think, February 2022, and then started a junior program in April, so 2 months later, and just been building ever so steadily. And at the same time, I was working as a cover agent, so I was doing like 60, 70-hour weeks, just trying to make sure that the business can actually grow. And then it got to a point where it was okay and it was sustainable, and then I was like, yes, this is what I'm doing, and I'm enjoying it. So.
This is always the story, isn't it? When you go through something that eventually becomes as successful as it has become, you've got to put in that grind early doors. Tell me, had you done any sort of training before? You know, what was that sort of introduction to yourself from being someone that loved tennis to then teaching people how to play?
Yeah, no, I had been coaching for a while before then. It didn't just come completely out of a random spot of idea, and I've always been involved in instruction as well, even back when I was doing like karate. I think that was my first kind of exposure to some kind of instructing. So I used to be asked by the sensei to like help train some of the beginner players, you know what I mean, the beginner people. And I think, just like you just start to develop those skills to be able to communicate and show people how to do things. And then I did become a teacher as well, and I just think this is sort of a little bit reluctantly at times. It's just been a bit of the path that I've gone down, and and I think now that the skills that I've picked up over those years have kind of come full circle into something that I'm passionate about and I enjoy as well. So good.
Yeah, there's got to be this sort of buzz as well when you're teaching somebody and you see how much progress they make over time, because you train people of all different experience levels. Yeah,
and I think it's also what those people, they all have different reasons for being there as well, and you've got to try it. You can't do a one-size-fits-all approach. You've really got to find out what makes them tick and what they're going to do with it as well.
And what was it like in those sort of early months of starting up the business? I know you said you were putting in hours, 60-hour weeks, like you said, to try and keep it going. What was it like trying to recruit people to play?
Tough. I mean, anybody who thinking about doing something similar, you know, it's definitely a struggle. I would say that, just word of mouth doesn't happen overnight. So if you put the work in and, you know, you do good sessions, people start to talk, and I think that's generally how I've gone about sort of growing it. I haven't really shouted too loudly on social media at times or anything like that, and just, you know, let people come experience it. It's hard to get them through the door, but whoever comes, you know, make sure that they have a great experience. You give them all the attention that they need. And really tailor your approach to them and make them you know feel that you want them to be there, and we do genuinely as well. And I think if you're genuine, that's what really helps as well. People relate to that.
What was the demand like here in Medway for people wanting to play tennis? I know you said when you were growing up, you'd go and play at the Strand with your mates. What was that like turning into becoming a provider for it? Did you have much competition?
Well, I think in terms of clubs around Medway, Avenue Tennis is a big tennis club, and they've got an amazing infrastructure. And I think what we provide is perhaps something a little bit different to what they provide. So I think you've got different tennis clubs that kind of offer something a little bit different for people who want to try it and kind of experience in a different way, a different kind of approach. So, but yeah, there are definitely clubs in Medway, and there are definitely people out there that are providing tennis and stuff. So it's definitely there's definitely a bit of a competition out there. I think also we're not competing against other tennis clubs, and so we want to work with other tennis clubs. We want to, particularly with competitions as well, it's really nice if you can get a good relationship going with different clubs, and we do have that, where we sort of network and tell players that competitions are happening at our venue and competitions are happening at their venue, because you need players to compete. So if you're a bit sort of isolated, it doesn't really work. And I think just as the last thing to say about that as well is there's been a rise in other different sports that are quite similar to tennis in recent years. So paddle and pickleball are quite big sports as well that people sort of turn their hand to.
That's it for part one. Join us after the break as Dan and I talk about the current state of the game, and I ask what his message would be to his younger self. See you in just a few moments. Hello and welcome back to Invicta Sport right here on KMTV. Today we're speaking with Medway tennis coach Dan French about his journey from tennis fan to owning his own academy. Here's part two of our chat with him. Is it easier, harder than tennis? Is it comparable in any way?
From the experience that I had, I think definitely hitting off the glass that's a challenge. You're sort of turning and interacting with the ball in a way where the ball's coming off the glass and going forwards, and the ball always comes towards you in tennis. So that was a little bit difficult to sort of get my head around. But I think largely, the racket work or the paddle work is you don't need to change your grip as much. So you kind of set yourself in one grip, and I think I can definitely see the value in it for someone who would like to develop like their volleys and their short game, and like these little shots where they need to adapt and things. And but that sort of stuff could be done on a tennis court as well. But anything to do with a ball coming towards you, hitting a ball or anything like that, you're working on the ability to read something come towards you, and how you deal with that. The characteristics of the ball, pace, direction, depth, spin, speed. So really, I would even players who don't get the chance to play on the court, whether it's paddle, tennis or whatever, but they want to get better at this sort of thing. You can do this at home with you can throwing and catching, batting a balloon, whatever. Just because we're not calling it tennis on a tennis court, there's so many things that are similar. So and those are the skills that we're teaching.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about the LTA. I know you're associated with them. They're putting a lot of money, working with local councils, and lots of our Kent councils as well have signed up to this, trying to redevelop some of these tennis courts that we've seen that have gone into disarray over years. Having more places for youngsters to learn is obviously going to be great for getting more people into the sport. Surely it's something that you'd be in favour of, having more tennis courts across the county. Oh yeah, 100%. And I'm really looking forward to the idea of particularly Chatham Football Ground and the Strand. That's a court that inspired me to play anyways in general, so when I was playing with my friends. But I think this is really good for to have good upkeep on those courts as well. And I believe that the council, they're going to be looking at providing sort of free sessions as well, and I'll be in favour of that, and I'll definitely putting my hand up and sort of wanting to help that along with the skills that we've got and what we can provide as well. So we definitely would like to be a part of that and help sort of raise the sport as well. Let's talk about your club. So we've been down before, we've taken a camera down and we've had a look and seen what you guys are up to, and it seems like there's such a community down at Dan James Tennis. Tell me, what's the sort of week in, week out like?
Busy. There's a lot of coaching going on at the moment, so from all the different age groups that are broken down into the different colour balls. So a typical week will be Monday to Thursday, and then Saturday coaching in the morning, and then we're also kind of opened up a lot more competition. So I think one of the big differences between now and the last time we spoke was I've become a tournament referee, and that's allowed more chances for people to get a bit more involved and play and actually have tournaments that are sanctioned by the LTA. And that really does draw some players in to come and play on our courts and play those competitions. So building up a nice reputation for that as well. So a typical week is it's quite full on. I see an adult group every evening now. So we've broken them down into more of an advanced class as well. And then we've got a ladies only session, and then we've got our mixed sessions as well, as we prepare for our first sort of Kent League games. So this is something new for us this season. We're going to do the Summer Kent League. So with that in mind, sort of had to add another session and probably put a little bit of focus on doubles to try and help those players that are going to represent the club in that. So that'll be quite fun as well. And
of course, getting involved in that local community as well, that sort of Kent spirit. It's a sort of a segue because I wanted to move on to talk about Emma Raducanu now. She's got those Kent links, being from Bromley. For someone like her, I mean, winning the US Open in the first time that she'd been there, there was a lot of celebration around Emma Raducanu at the time. And the reason I bring her up is because for someone that trains a lot of youngsters, I wanted to know, how do you get that balance between celebrating the success and not over-expecting too much in the future? Because since that US Open win, Emma Raducanu hasn't won another major since then, and there's been lots of questions about whether there is just too much expectation on her.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very British thing, isn't it? And that's such a mentality that runs through most of our sports, isn't it? With football as well. And I think first off, Raducanu, I mean, I'm in no position to say because she's done something that is beyond my reach ever, and she will always have that Grand Slam, and I think that she's done a great job and a great ambassador as well for tennis in Kent and tennis nationally and globally as well. So, but yeah, in terms of expectations, I think the women's game is that's definitely a game where it's quite hard for players to kind of sort of stay consistent. We're starting to see it flatline a little bit with players like Sabalenka and Swiatek now, who are at the top of the game and being there a little bit more consistently. But I've remarked quite a few times when people have posed a similar sort of question that it'll be one hell of a quiz question if someone was to ask me to name all of the women Grand Slam winners for the past sort of 20 years. So it's difficult to stay at that top and repeat that success. But yeah, just to go back to what you're kind of originally asking, if I had a young player in front of me who I see's got some good potential, I think it's about making sure that they understand what the process is and not being outcome driven. And I think this across all tennis and perhaps all sport as well. I'm pretty sure there'll be lots of similarities. If you spoke to other coaches, if you have a more of a process mindset, the outcome starts to follow. And for tennis players, stepping up onto the baseline and just, going through what you want to do, where do you want the serve to go, how is that going to look? Visualization is quite a big thing in sport as well. But if you're visualizing lifting the trophy before, the process of getting there, that's going to sometimes work against you a little bit. It's nice to dream, but I think the present, and I think Nadal says that a lot as well, point by point by point by point. It's a very long game, isn't it?
And there's so much that goes into the sort of mental approach to a game as well. I mean, we know how physical tennis is at that high level, how much an injury can set someone's career back, but as well mental health as well. It's such a huge conversation. I just wondered how do you bring that approach into your training as well? How much do you talk about that side of a mental approach to tennis?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I think I think definitely now that we've opened up more competition and we've got players who are actually transitioning from just playing in groups, and we've got some really young players who are really motivated, but also tennis is a difficult sport in terms of win-lose. I found myself talking to one of my young players the other day about this. And he's a gymnast as well, and I said, in gymnastics, you get personal bests, but in tennis we don't measure ourselves like that. It's measured up against me and you playing a game, and if I'm not feeling my best that day, you've won, and that's really hard to take. And the scoring system as well in tennis, you can win lots and lots of points, but you might walk away without a set, and you might even walk away without a match. And getting the communication around that back to the young players can be difficult. I think it's hard to try to manage the disappointment sometimes, and let them know that they are doing great, and there's those expectations. It's a longer process than perhaps maybe what's right in front of them in that very moment. But yeah, those players, they're doing all right, and it's part of the journey, isn't it? I think as well.
Definitely. Well, let's wrap things up. I want to go back to yourself, because I think it ties into what you were just saying quite nicely. It's a question we're going to ask all of our guests on Invicta Sport over the next few weeks. If you were to talk to your younger self again, that youngster who was playing tennis with his mates, trying to get people involved in it, what would you say about the future, about everything that you've achieved since?
Yeah, just it was going to happen. I think. Some of myself, I did struggle with a lot of sort of self-esteem when I was a bit younger, and being someone competitive as well. I think the older I've got, the less competitive I've got. I think I almost burnt myself out a little bit. So what will be will be. But I think if I'd known what I'd be doing now, about 10, 15 years ago, I would have taken that. It's been really good. 3 years of business, and to be like last week we were invited to the Kent LTA Awards, and that's something that I wouldn't have thought was possible when I opened the gate for the first time and said I'm going to start a tennis club. I thought it wouldn't last. So the fact that it's happening, and people are enjoying themselves, and I think that's one of the biggest joys about it as well, is actually just seeing people really enjoy it and having a good time with it. And yeah, so I think for myself, I think just knowing that, if I knew that a while ago, I probably wouldn't have been so hard on myself. And my coach used to say that to me anyways, say I'm not hard on you, because you're hard on yourself anyways. So that would have been his approach to managing someone who's disappointed with a loss. Just say get on with it.
Dan James, thank you very much for joining us today. Really good to have you on.
Thank you very much for following me.
That's it from us on today's episode of Invicta Sport. Don't forget there's plenty more sports news, interviews and features from right across the county available on our website. Just go to kmtv.co.uk, click on the Sports tab, or watch back previous episodes of Invicta Sport by clicking on Programmes. That's it for now. We'll see you next week.